And I can't even give you a card. Thanks a lot. I had one and I had to leave downstairs. I think I informed you why I'm here.
You're interested in possibly acquiring some real estate in the New York area. I've got one of my real estate partners joining us here in a few minutes.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can address whatever questions you've got. What sort of real estate are you interested in?
First, I should be telling you what kind of, not the real estate, but whom I'm working with.
Okay.
Because it's not myself. I'm an advisor to a, why not being frank, Minister of Mines in a West African country.
Okay.
And I don't know how you know, or whether you know how it works in, not only in Africa, in all those resource-rich countries. We've got less and less natural resources.
Mm-hmm.
Rare earths, we know already the problem with the Chinese and almost a war between Japan and China. So companies are eager to extract the last resources.
Mm-hmm.
So it means they are eager to get, thank you very much, to get mining rights. And then they pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you would name it. I think I name it facilitation money. My minister was minister for some years, so he accumulated a substantial amount of money from these practices. Now, he's getting older. His government is getting older, so he might be out one day, and he wants to secure his money. So the money and he thinks the United States is the best place to have the money, and his wife is very keen in getting a brownstone. So that was actually the trigger.
Okay.
You want to get a brownstone? I can't. Come on, you've got the money. So she wants to get a brownstone. If we would start with a brownstone in New York, and then he wants to reap what he has sown. Getting some property here for himself, and he wants to have a nice
commercial property, additional real estate. Residential
anything,
property?
some more real estate.
Okay.
He would like to get a plane, probably a Gulfstream jet. Commissions the building of a yacht. So starting a more secure and a nice life here in the States.
Mm-hmm.
Now, problem is more and more pressure is being put or being exercised on the governments in those resource-rich countries on being more transparent and fighting corruption, as we are doing here in the States. Now, and he has to give speeches about his government, how they comply with those, or how they actually work against corruption. If his name now would appear in connection with buying some real estate here and other items, it would look at least very, very embarrassing.
Right, because presumably his salary and wherever it is would not cover the kinds of acquisitions he's done.
For sure, that's the salary of a teacher here. And so how can we make sure that he is being able to buy property here and to live a nice life, but his name being out?
Right. Any guesses as to how much money we're talking about for the brownstone and the other items?
I mean, for the brownstone, you have to probably count for between 5 and 20 million, depends where. Let's say, talk about 10 million. For a second-hand Gulfstream, I could imagine 10, 20 million. A yacht would be at least, if you talk about an Abramovich yacht, this dimension would be around 200, 300 million. So I would start, let's say, with around 50 million coming here. And so it's not a one-off. So we need to deposit the money here as well to have it in a safe haven. You never know what happens there. There might be a putsch and what have you, and his rivals are coming to power. So getting the money here and managing here without his name being in. Whatever we use it for, that is another question.
Right. Well, on the title to the brownstone, each of these items can put it in a corporate name.
Right.
If somebody wanted to dig, they could probably, if they dug hard enough, we can put a number of layers here, but if somebody was really out to find out, they could probably dig through it all.
Who would be the someone to dig? Who would be the somebody?
I don't know. That depends on.
So his enemies.
His enemies.
What's about?
Sorry, I'm late.
That's all right. We're just starting to talk.
Early.
How are you? Very
Fine,
nice
how are
to
you?
meet you. Early is always good. Early is always
So I can't give you a call. I'm very sorry.
Okay, no problem.
You gave it to security downstairs. Right?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the wrong way to do this. Yes.
Yeah, but he insisted. So what can I do?
Right.
Yeah, and he has all the right because I didn't have an identity with me. So yeah. Yes. So his name has to be out. And
let's start over slightly here.
Yeah.
It represents a minister of mines in an African country. Do you want to tell us which one?
I can tell you later. Let me just have an idea.
Interested in making some acquisitions in the U.S., housing a jet, probably a yacht, housing 5 to 20 million jet, 10 to 20 yacht. 200 to 300 million. Okay. We need to talk about the risks, or just concerns about where he got the money and how to explain that.
That's it.
There are issues there. The transactions in which he would be involved here wouldn't be part of facilitating payments, but if that's really where the money came from, and if there were, quote unquote crimes committed someplace else, that starts to be an issue.
It's not the money of the proceeds of crimes like human trafficking or arms dealing. Mm. So it's what I told you. It's facilitation money. It's even not a U.S. American company involved. So the mining are some Canadian companies and other companies, but not U.S. American companies.
Not U.S. companies. Mm-hmm. Well, that helps a bit. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we were talking about how to insulate his ownership from public view.
Okay.
Lots of the big apartment buildings here, where the purchase prices range from 30 to 90 million now, are done through a corporate entity to shield whoever's buying it from public discussion of, oh, you just spent $90 million on a 3-bedroom apartment. So that part of it is almost standard business now for purchases at a certain level above.
Right. I mean, we have a very sophisticated tax group based up in Boston. Mm-hmm. They do a lot of this kind of planning. Putting aside the...
That is your company, your firm. Yeah.
Our firm.
Mm-hmm. Putting aside the issues of where the money comes from, from their perspective, many foreign owners just don't want anybody to know who they are. So they set up either corporations, or in some cases they set up limited liability companies. And there's usually one or two other companies up the food chain that make it even more difficult to identify.
But as I was telling our friend, if somebody really wants to find an answer, we can put as many layers as we want, and somebody might be able to dig through it. I'm just...
Yeah, and that was my question. Who would be somebody who has an interest in digging? You said rivals.
Well, it depends on his personal circumstances.
And what's about the United States? Because he wants to bring the money here because he thinks it's safer here.
Unless there are congressional investigations of something that are pointed to him, I don't see a U.S. interest being interested.
So, in congressional interest would be political interest, because he has he's a PAP, whatever, he's done something wrong in his country.
Let's assume he was not complete in his listing for you of the companies from which he received facilitating payments.
Right.
He forgot Caterpillar or God knows who in the U.S. There's a U.S. congressional investigation of FCPA violations by Caterpillar or any of these companies. Right. Somebody in the press might decide, well, let's track this down.
Good. But that means if a U.S. company is involved, FCPA, but not directly investigation into who is owning this account, who is owning this.
I can't see any reason for anybody to...
It wouldn't be typical. I mean, look, just pick a country. So say it's Nigeria.
Right. No, not Nigeria. It is too.
Nigeria,
but anyways,
it's too messy.
It's almost too easy.
Let's say it's Sierra Leone, smaller country.
And some journalist has particular interest in revealing some of the untoward acts that go on there. That's always a possibility too, and you can't necessarily. Right. So the fact that Congress is not involved doesn't necessarily mean
that's what would spark separately a reporter's interest. But a reporter might be doing a story on Sierra Leone or Nigeria and have this would be a part of it.
Right, so there is more interest by the media, investigative journalism, for instance. Right. Okay, but from your side, from side of the U.S. government, you don't think there would be any problem. What's about IRS? Any involvement of IRS?
Well, he's doesn't have any presence here now, doesn't owe any taxes here now. As long as he pays his taxes, I don't see where the IRS would have a particular interest.
Okay.
A new taxpayer from which they would plan to collect everything they could.
Fair enough.
They'd be happy to have him. There would be some issues in terms of how we structure the real estate, for example.
Could we talk about it now?
Well, for the back end.
Yes.
But because, for example, we have a tax in the United States called FIRPTA. Foreign Investors and Real Property Transfer Act. Yeah. And, it's very important to structure the transaction. Probably through an LLC. I don't want to say, because I'd want to talk to our tax folks before I said do X or Y. But most likely, you're better off with an LLC. Typically, you're better off with an LLC. Typically. And one of the reasons is FIRPTA. You minimize FIRPTA. Another one is estate tax. Because if you die as a resident of the United States owning real estate, then you're going to be subject to the United States estate tax. And you don't want that, particularly in New York, for example, because New York's got its own estate tax.
So we would pay every taxes, any tax due, but if you can reduce it, so how to do it then?
Again, I think I don't want to tell you exactly because I don't know for certain. It depends on where he's resident, if he owns other interests in companies, let's say, in other countries, but we have a very, very good guy in Boston. And he has helped me
on cross-border tax issues.
Yeah, and he's helped me with several of these situations where people just buying in the United States because they wanted to buy in the United States, not necessarily because they were looking to avoid anything, but they want to minimize their tax exposure. So.
Right. So there is a possibility. So how to go about it? You mentioned LLC.
An LLC is what you typically see. Yes.
So where to establish it or to register it?
It would typically be where you're buying the property. So if you're buying in New York, you would probably want a New York LLC.
Any problems with setting it up? Who would own the LLC? So who is...
Presumably we would set up a little bit of a series of owners to try and, again, protect privacy as much as anything else.
Yeah.
So Company A is owned by Company B, which is owned jointly by Company C and D, and your party owns all of or the majority of the shares of C and D.
So we create several companies.
Yes.
All in New York or different states?
I'd say at some point that probably pretty quickly you'd go offshore. There's really no tax benefit to having, let's say, more than, from my experience, 2 owners. You have LLC, property company is owned by holding company, which is then owned by somebody from the Cayman Islands or wherever. So, but part of that depends on your client and his own, like where he's based, and does he own anything? I mean, we did something for a guy, and he was a resident of, he owned a Panamanian company, and this guy worked out an ownership structure which has been upheld, no problems.
So we would have, let's say, the major company here. This is being owned by another company in Cayman, for instance, and that is owned by another one, let's say, in Isle of Man or whatever.
Yeah.
And you could set this up?
Sure.
Yes, with help from lawyers in those jurisdictions.
And again, the important is anonymity. So that could be secured through this kind of different setups.
And that's the vehicle people use when they don't want it public that they are owning part of one of the major towers in New York.
Now, who would be then the...
And that's true for Americans as well as...
Sorry, yeah. Who would then be the shareholder, the member of the LLC. I think those are members.
Well, yes, it is. And again, typically the first tier up would be another United States entity, another LLC probably.
As well in New York or somewhere else?
I would say either New York or Delaware.
Why New York? Why Delaware? I mean,
well,
I know
Delaware
about
has certain
Delaware,
advantages in terms of it's less expensive for one thing.
Yeah.
Both in terms of setting it up and then also maintaining it every year.
Yeah, right.
I think the corporate law is a little bit more friendly to the owners in Delaware, but probably not significantly. Particularly if it's only one asset and ultimately there's only one real beneficial owner. There's no right answer on that. Like there's no everybody does it this way. Some people go to Delaware.
Right.
I don't know that. I think sometimes that's a waste of money.
So you think it's even better in New York?
I don't see there's any disadvantage to being in New York,
okay,
except for the cost. But it's not. If you're
talking cost shouldn't be a big problem.
And if you're buying a $20 million residence, it shouldn't be a problem at all.
Yeah. So what is the cost about? Just a
couple $1,000. It's not a lot of money.
Can't forget that is even not peanuts.
Right.
Cent coins on the beach.
Sorry.
Cent coins on the beach.
Right.
So again, the owner is another company, but somewhere down, you said down the line,
yep,
there is my minister. How can we make sure that he's actually never appearing in any document?
Well, one possibility is to consider using one of the trust companies that's in a place like Isle of Man.
Yeah.
And see what they think, if they can help facilitate it. Because oftentimes they'll agree to act as you set up maybe the ultimate owner is a trust that's for the benefit of the minister, but it's not necessarily something that gets revealed. And under the secrecy laws of those jurisdictions, I mean, we have something like that currently for one of our clients with a company based in Switzerland.
Isn't there a problem if the more members I have down in the chain, the more, the higher the risk is to reveal who is who is behind it, or because it might raise suspicion or not? I mean, you have the experience, I guess, so.
I mean, the reason to use a number of different levels is to make it less likely that the name would come up.
And you have experience in it, so that shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, we've done it, a few times over the last couple of years.
Okay, and never any investigation?
Not yet.
Subpoena?
No.
So it's quite safe.
Should be. I mean, a lot of it depends on you have to follow the rules. You have to file your tax returns. You have to maintain the entity status and pay those bills. Again, you're not talking big dollars. But.
Good. So I have to talk to the minister because it sounds very promising. So you could do it for us, setting up the company, and again finding the nominees, and as well managing, because managing how to bring in the money into the country. Now we have the companies or the LLCs, but somehow we have to bring the money in. How to do it, and again that through the chain of money transfer, the source is not being revealed. How to go about this?
How are these funds kept currently?
At the moment, there are different banks in the country, and that is still safe, but you never know how long. Therefore, the reason you won't have it here.
Most banks in the U.S. will have rules about knowing who their customers are,
right,
and knowing what their source of funds is. That might be a problem, depending on what the facts and circumstances are. Concerning the minister.
If the owner is, you said, a trust, for instance, in the Isle of Man, then for the bank, the receiving bank here, it would be the Isle of Man, wouldn't it? Not the beneficial or the final owner.
We would have to look into how far specific banks look into, the know your customer laws and how far they would dig.
But you have experience, so there must be difference between smaller ones like I know a friend of mine is a customer of they've just seen, didn't know they exist, so this must be a smaller bank, at least here in New York. So what about those
banks? Don't want to be in the position of acting as conduit for funds illegally acquired.
Right, because they might be in problems, but
there would be problems.
But they want to see money as well.
If they were seen as facilitating the transfer of illegal, ill-gotten monies, by money laundering or whatever, then that's going to be a problem for them. And the government here has cracked down increasingly on them. I mean, there's I forget which bank it is, a French bank that may be paying a $12 billion fine or something because they systematically were violating the sanctions against Iran and other things. So in many ways, you'd probably be better off with a smaller bank. Because
that would be a possibility.
Because the bigger banks are much more serious about looking into that stuff.
Their reputation.
Right, yes.
And there may be other banking systems that are less rigorous on this than the U.S.
What would it be?
Number of possibilities. England has gotten recently very tough on this stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
The usual banking havens, I think, would be ones you would want to consider. We could provide you with the list of countries where the banking systems require less detail on ownership or source of funds.
So that would be kind of intermediary banks. So from my country to this bank as an intermediary bank where there are less regulations, and from there to here because...
well, I don't know that you need to bring the money here.
But you're going to need
except to spend it.
Right, so...
But not in an account here or with a U.S. bank.
Well, I think it depends on the facts. So some of it depends on what the minister ends up buying. I mean, I'm talking as a property lawyer, because that's what I know. I don't know yachts and jets.
There's also
he just wants to have some money here. He wants to use it for different purposes.
And may want to buy other commercial properties too.
Okay.
Yeah.
But let's start with a $20 million apartment.
Right.
The first thing is, I mean, obviously, you got to start with getting a very good broker. You got to identify what neighborhoods will look like.
But this you can do as well for me.
Sure.
Okay.
But you're never going to be able to buy a co-op apartment because the scrutiny with the board, that will be a problem.
Okay.
Condominiums don't have that level of scrutiny, so it should not be an issue.
Right.
Or buying a brownstone, which you mentioned at the beginning.
Exactly.
And if you end up paying all cash, then it may be possible to facilitate wires through an intermediary like a title company, a title insurance company.
And what
we have this. I don't know if they have this in Germany. I know a lot of the countries in Europe don't have it. Title insurance. So rather than the lawyers checking the deeds, there are companies who insure. They check the deeds and they issue an insurance policy that says that I have the authority to transfer the title to you.
Okay.
And it is conceivable that you would wire the money directly into their account, and they could arrange to pay the seller.
So it's a kind of a service provider.
Yeah.
Money service provider.
No, it's much more than that, but it's part of the job.
And you name them how?
They're called title companies.
Title companies. Okay.
Title insurance.
So we could use those ones. It's a kind of an escrow account, I guess.
Yes.
Okay.
On some of the larger transactions today, lawyers are not the ones holding the deposit money, for example, on commercial deals, not residential deals, on commercial deals. The title companies are actually acting as escrow agents. So
they are kind of virtual banks, if you want.
In a way, just in terms of a flow of funds.
Right, because an escrow account is just intermediary.
Right.
And they can actually keep it for some time, like a bank.
It would be unusual on a residential property, even if it's a very high-end residential property, that they would hold the deposit money. That normally is held by the seller's lawyer.
Right.
But what I'm talking about is so you could wire the money into a title company, they could wire that money out on your behalf, and then at the time of the closing, same thing.
So that would be kind of an intermediary then?
Yeah, but it would typically be on the very short term, 24 hours.
It's not a problem because it's just to get into here.
Right.
So you could set this up as well as possible.
Yep.
And then where to keep the money? Then in an account here with Chase or whatever bank? Because it's not just for buying the property. He needs as well for maintenance costs. And I mean, he wants to live. And his wife doesn't want to have a brownstone. She wants to live there. And she wants to run parties, I guess.
What we have seen is, with some of the foreign owners, is they appoint a company in New York to be their manager.
Right.
And they pay the real estate taxes. They pay the insurance. They make sure that, you know, there's a menu that you can choose from. And the more you ask them to do, the more you pay them.
Or it's the LLC we set up. They could do it as well. At least nominally.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, they could. I'm not sure you want to have the minister's wife being responsible. If she's more concerned about having the parties, she may not be concerned about paying the real estate taxes.
But for opening an account, because we need the money here. So this could be done through the LLC.
Yeah, I would think so.
Which would then pay for this company you mentioned.
Again, the issue is, you know, and we can't answer this, whether or not there's going to be a bank that will get themselves comfortable with where the money is coming from.
Yeah, therefore I asked you, you've got the experience, are there banks, and which banks, no, you don't have to tell me which banks now, but are there banks we can use in the US?
We need to know more of the facts about the minister's situation.
But in general it's possible. As I said, it's not money from human trafficking, from arms deals, from drug trafficking. It's this kind of illicit money, whatever it is, so the normal money, business money, facilitation money. So somebody told me black money or whatever it's named.
Well, if it violated the law of the United States, there would be problems. There are lots of countries to which, with regard to which facilitating payments are not illegal.
Right. So in case that is fine, it's no local U.S. law being violated because it's not U.S. American.
And it's better if nobody's law was violated.
Yeah. So
presumably the law of Swaziland, whatever, is not being violated.
It's not, because there is at the moment no anti-corruption law, so that is normal practice. And no American company involved. So you would do, because if you would do it now for us, you would, I guess, do your investigation as well.
Yep.
So if you are confident that no American law is being violated in getting this money, then would be fine.
That's the right start. We want to find out the rest of the facts too, that's a preliminary beyond which, if that was a problem, we'd have a problem right at the start.
It's not even fair enough. That is what I expect you to do, because we want to we want to comply with the American law. So if this is all fine, then it's not a problem. Then again, getting the money in here, we could set up different structures to bring it in here. Wouldn't be a problem either. So what obstacles would you see? Obstacles is in getting the money here, and obstacles in, not an obstacle, but I would say the risk of his name being revealed. What would you see as a...
I think as long as there are two risks. One is whatever bank we end up working with. So obviously you and your client will need to get comfortable and give them whatever information they need to the point where their identity is not going to be revealed.
And here I trust you that you have facilitated.
Well, I mean, we'll do what we can. You can't guarantee somebody misbehaving within an organization, and nor can you guarantee that somehow pick up on something.
Right.
And then the other thing is to try to structure the transaction to make it as anonymous as possible. But Jim and I are not the right people for that. We really need to talk to our colleagues in Boston who do the tax stuff. So particularly, as I mentioned,
we based all of our tax people in our office there, just because having them all together produces a better result. They should talk to each other.
Good.
Most of our finance and real estate folks are here.
Okay, so this you could do as well. Good.
We probably ought to find out a little bit more about you and your involvement and how these pieces fit together. That is some useful assurance too.
Yeah, yeah. They said, I'm just the advisor minister. I was here on a business trip, and he said, if you're in New York, while you're in New York, why don't you check with some high-rank lawyers? What I'm doing now. So it's the first, let's say, scoping.
Yep.
And I will report back to him, tell him what you told me, and that sounds quite promising. And then I come back to you and tell you what we can do.
Good.
And if you can set up the whole structure, if it's in one hand, on one hand it's your firm, even if there are more hands involved, makes it easier. And as well, the risk of leakage is reduced.
Agreed.
Yeah. And I think you've got your confidentiality ethics, so you wouldn't mention anything either. Okay, I find that is. I think it's fine.
We have no choice on that one, but no, I mean, you always have to be mindful. Again, bearing in mind that what you said, no American law was violated, no local law was violated, but if we're aware that a crime is being committed, we have an obligation to report that.
That's right.
So,
you have an obligation to report, or if it's done in the past, or if it's done now. I mean, there is no crime committed, but
either one. But certainly, if you know that a crime is being committed, we have an obligation to report it. That's part of our canon of ethics.
Oh, really? A friend of mine is a lawyer in Germany, and she is telling me that is under the confidentiality of, or the privilege of a lawyer, not to reveal any crime being committed.
I don't believe. I mean,
that's not true here.
Not true. So you have to do. But anyways, as I said, there is no crime being committed. So.
Sure.
Fantastic.
Well, let us know any sense on timing from the minister's point of view, how quickly he wants to move on any of this?
I'll be back next week, and then I have to talk to him. Quite busy at the moment, so might be 2-3 weeks time. Okay. I come back to you. I've got your contacts. Okay. And best to you, Jim, or
good.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Either one's good.
Fantastic.
Happy to chat whenever it's possible to move the ball forward on this.
Fantastic. Great.
Good.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for coming in.